The next session's drinks, so not what you think though. Drought resilience
Could be.
information, or maybe it is.
Oh, what, 10:30?
We had this, I was saying 2 before 10 or 10 before 2. Drought resilience information and knowledge sharing. So Cam Nicholson from the Southwest Node, Southern Farming, is going to present. Thanks, Cam.
Thanks, David. Good morning, everybody. I'm a little bit different in the whole drought hub. I've actually got my own consulting business with my wife, and we also farm about 30 kilometres from here on the Bellarine Peninsula with sheep and cattle. I work with Southern Farming Systems as one of the nodes, but I'm not actually an employee of Southern Farming Systems. So I'm an agricultural advisor, and I did 2 consultancies yesterday along the drought cycle that I'm going to touch on. This project around drinks really came about from some internal thinking. And I think it's one of the strengths of the way the hub's been put together, that we can have these sort of conversations and people can contribute to certain ideas, and they develop into what I think are pretty important concepts. So the drinks is one of these concepts that I'd like to just step through with you. A little bit around the sort of genesis or the background to it. First of all, and it's been touched on a couple of times already, is that it is really, really hard to engage people if it's not relevant to their needs at this point in time. I can tell you, doing anything now in the job I'm doing that isn't related to dry season management and a bad autumn break, you might as well walk away. Okay, people have only got one thing on their mind. So how do we make sure, if we're going to roll this sort of stuff out, how can we be relevant, and importantly, how can we anticipate that sort of relevance? So what do I mean by relevance? The time of year that it is, the enterprise that it is, and the seasonal conditions. Are we in good conditions or are we in really tight conditions? And Fiona's already touched on this. She talked about the 4 bits of the drought cycle. And so we've used this as one of the, I suppose, foundational bits in developing this idea around drinks. I'm going to add another thing to it, and I'm not very good with graphics, but if you could understand, I reckon that's quite good actually. We don't always go round in that circle. We don't have a good period, then we go into an uncertain period, and then into a drought, and then into recovery. In fact, the reality is, and when I did some historic analysis for this part of the world, so Southwest Victoria, is we do this good period into uncertain period and back into good period 3 to 4 times as often as we go around the full drought cycle. And I can tell you the angst that people are feeling now, because we're in an uncertain period. I've got pretty good confidence that spring's going to be all right. We've just got to get through autumn and we've just got to get through winter. But boy, do you reckon there's a lot of stress out there at the moment. Okay, so this thinking of not only going around in that circle, but flicking between good periods and uncertain periods, we have to be responsive to. And we've got to try and anticipate to be relevant in that. The third bit, and I've observed this, and a lot of the colleagues, so one of the things I do with Southern Farming Systems is the consultation bit for the Southwest Node. One of the things when I've spoken to other advisors is they tell me that some farmers do it better than others. Everybody experiences this. Some people just cope with it better, are better set up, and are better prepared. So what can we learn from that? So if you put those 3 things together, we came up with this type of what you might call simple thinking, in fact, pretty powerful. We have the 4 different periods in this cycle, and then we have, in this case here, for our part of the world, the 4 different seasons. And I can tell you the really good farmers do certain things in autumn in good times to prepare themselves for drought and bad times. They do certain things in the drought period in autumn that set themselves up for the recovery. What we've got to be able to do is anticipate what those things are, and if we're clever enough, we can get 1 step ahead, and so we have relevant material at the time that people are going to confront. Rather than thinking, I've done my project, I now need to extend it, and it's not relevant for that point in time. Also means that there's a hell of a lot of stuff out there already that we could be using. We just need to know where to position it, where to be able to grab it, and where to be able to use it in a timely manner. So this is where drinks came from. Drought-Resilience Information and Knowledge Systems, it's called. Now, Billy up the back, who's going to put his hand up now, came up with that. Philly and I have had a few beers at different times, so I think that might be where. In fact, he's in my phone as Moondog because we had a few Moondogs. He doesn't come up as Philly, he comes up as Moondog. Anyway, he came up with this as an idea and said, we reckon this has got legs. You know, if we can all pull this together and pull what we understand and what we know, we could really use this to get ahead of the game and keep ahead of the game, which would make the hub and the nodes and the stuff that we present highly relevant. This is one example. Now, I don't expect you to read all the words around this, but this is for broadacre grazing, because you know when I said it was enterprise specific, and it really is. And then this is just one of those parts of the cycle, the uncertain period. And then we had some workshops and said, what do good farmers do in autumn when they're in their uncertain period? They do this, they do this, they do this, they're prepared for this, they've got this in place, blah, blah, blah. And we did that for the 4 seasons of the year because that was relevant to us at that point in time. What it really allows you to do is think we're in winter now. If we're still in the uncertain period in spring, or we anticipate we'll be in the uncertain period in spring, what are the things that we really need to have ready that we can roll out so it's relevant when people go, now I'm in this situation? You go, yeah, we've got something for you. We've got the workshops prepared, we've got the information prepared, we've got that ready to go. And I know Michelle, who's over there, who's with Southern Farming Systems, we ran one last week at Lismore, 80 odd people, which was around this drought-related stuff, because we anticipated that as we're moving into different periods, farmers are going to confront certain things, and we need to have the materials there ready if we want to be useful. So one of them I've highlighted there is to create a livestock selling or retain list. Because if people go from now in winter and they go to spring and we're still really tight, they're going to be offloading stock. Okay, that's a big decision. It's actually a big decision and have a big impact on your business going forward. Okay, so how can we help with that? So we come up with things like this. Now, this is called a decision matrix. I haven't got time to go through it, but it's basically a process to help people think through which animals do I keep and which animals do I get rid of. Okay, I love this stuff. I think decision making is our Achilles heel in all of this. We keep focusing on information and getting information out there, but we don't actually teach a process of how to make a good decision that's right for their business. This matrix is just one way. And basically what it is you have a list of critical factors and you have various scores and you just go through and rate them. And on that basis, you then make a decision on what you do. And you just apply this to each mob on the way through. We've got about 6 or 8 of these built at home for our farm at home, and we go through them. Fiona and I go through them, and we make a lot of our decisions based on predetermined thinking around how we make that decision. Okay, good farmers do that. Good farmers do that. Okay. As I said, it also gives you the chance to prepare and advertise. Because if anybody knows, you try and run a workshop, you can't think, oh, I've got a good idea today, tomorrow we'll run the workshop. It takes a lot of time to get the people together, to get the advertising, to get all that sort of stuff. So we're now starting to think about what could spring throw up for us, and what have we got ready that we can roll out that's relevant in springtime. Okay, so one we did last spring, and people may not recall, but certainly in this part of the world, last spring was pretty tight. September was pretty bloody awful. October was pretty tight as well. And they were talking about it was going to be an El Nino. Everybody remember that? Okay. So we started preparing some information. So we prepared things like pasture growth rates and what could you expect. Now, when you look at the information that's historically been out there, it's all been about averages. And averages tell you nothing about risk. What we wanted to know is in a tight year, how much could we expect to grow? So we did some modelling to be able to create these sort of graphs. So these are box and whisker graphs about pasture growth rates up here for the different months of the year. Okay, so we could now provide information that was far more relevant to do feed budgets. We also did some of this stuff. So Michelle prepared this. So it was information that we sent out to the Southern Farming Systems members and put on the website, which is how to do a simple feed budget over the next few months. To know how short of feed you might be. To anticipate, do you need to sell stock before Christmas, or do you need to buy in more fodder because you're not going to get there otherwise? And then it rained. Okay, so anticipating it was going to be dry, we then got a hell of a wet summer. and then it cut out again. Okay. But what it does is at least it gave us a chance to prepare materials and have stuff there be relevant for the people that really needed it. A couple of other examples I'll show you here. It's a great tool to talk to third parties about and discuss. If you ever want to run a really good workshop, run a workshop around that framework and ask people, what do you do? What are the good farmers you see do at this time of year? Fantastic engagement tool. Libby, who's up the back somewhere, yeah, lives up there, from Westvic Dairy. We did a similar exercise with the dairy industry using the same framework, and Libby might make a couple of comments on that a little bit later on. And also from that stock take point of view, if we've got to run stuff on this, what's already existing that we can just tap into? Or what do we need that's new that's going to make it relevant? Great teaching tool. I do some lecturing at Marcus Oldham, and people don't know Marcus Oldham's a private farm management college. It's about 2 k's up that way. I did this last year. I gave it a whirl with the final year farm management students. And so I put them together. So all the kids that were from the Kimberley, you know, in the Northern Australian sort of country, I got them to sit together and do one of these. I got the guys from Tasmania to do ones. I got some in central New South Wales to do them. It was outstanding what they came out with. And some of them were going home and asking their parents, what do we do at this time? And when they handed in their assignments that they individualised, I had 30 examples. That was just fantastic. And they, in the feedback at the end of the year, said that was one of the best exercises they ever did. Why? Because it just helped them put down on paper to think about what do I need to be ready for at that time. You want drought resilience, that's the way you get it. You anticipate what you need and when you need it. And the third one's continuous improvement over time, which is where I'll finish up. And by that, I mean, when we ran some of these things, Michelle, in the last couple of weeks, anticipating that it's dry and people are in a bit of strife at the moment, 2 other things were suggested as we started working through this. One was, why don't we graze some of our winter crops as an extra feed source? Because people are at the point of lambing now. So why don't we do that? How do we feed ewes at the point of lambing? They've got to come out of containment. Jane talked about containment session before. When they come out of containment, how do you lamb down on no feed? Because you can't lamb down in containment. So they're things we hadn't quite anticipated, but we're learning from this year. So next time it comes around, we'll be in a better position to be able to answer that question. On that note, I'll pull the pin.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. I think your point about timing of ideas, when I did an entrepreneurial course, they had this, this concept of zeitgeist, this German word, which I kind of interpreted to mean the right idea at the right time. People need to be receptive to the idea at the time. I think it's a really key one. Excellent. We're going to jump straight into the next presentation because I'm going to try and keep us on time. Julian is unfortunately ill today, but he is online and going to present to us online. So fingers crossed the technology works after the years of COVID practice we've